Good. Welcome everybody to Tuesday night workshop at Monarch Family Chiropractic. Thank you for joining us in office and at home. We're going to be talking about the impacts on our gut and how the body and brain and how the brain plays a big part in that connection and how connected they are to each other. So we're going to jump right in, and you may notice that there's similarities to parts of this presentation. We're going to go and deviate from the information on the microbiome that Doc did the other week that was really specific to what we want to do to support our gut and support the microbiome, support all the good organisms and the bacteria that we want. And we're going to talk through how that really impacts the brain and look at it from the connection of the two. And talk about some great ways in which we can support the gut. And if you're looking at more dietary things, if you're looking at more foods, Doc covered all of that in great detail in the microbiome workshop, as well as some of the previous ones on nutrition and good fats and the things we want to do to support the biome that way and how we vary that up. So I'm going to go down some different paths and talk about the connection and the things we can do to support that. So as Socrates said, all diseases begin in the gut. They knew that back then. They were well ahead of their time in understanding where things come from and what creates diseases in the body or inflammation and chronic disease when it's there for a long time. So we're going to talk about this gut-brain connection, and we'll talk about a few different components. So some of these things will sound familiar because you've heard that before if you've been on other workshops, and then we're going to dive a little deeper into the components of the brain. Let me just move this up out of the way a bit more. Okay, so critical for more than just digesting food, right? It's the control center for the entire body, linking and is linked to very manufactured things like vitamins, regulating metabolism, blood sugar, influences genetic expression and brain chemistry when this connection is on or off. So for every message that the brain sends to the gut sends 9 more messages back to the brain. So there's a lot more cellular transaction happening and a lot more, or microbial, I should say, transaction happening and messages happening coming from the gut than it actually is being sent out. So we'll get to a little bit more of those details about the gut versus the brain and how that impacts how healthy that needs to be for us and why that can change how our body's responding to things. So with that said, controlling our brain's response to stress or brain hormone production, the activation of the brain's immune system, the growth of new brain cells, any adaptability to those new cells to learn, all of that has a connection and control with the gut. And we are more microbe, as I was just alluding to, right? We have more organisms living in our intestinal tract than we actually do have cells in our entire body. So it's a very big difference. And so it creates a very big impact on our body and our ability to function. Hang on, every time I tap on something else, I lose my mouse or my forward button. Okay, so let's talk about the design of the gut. And again, a few of these things are familiar probably to those of you who watch the other workshops, and then we're going to dive into some other components. But 100 to 150 times more genes are found in our microbiome or in our gut and our intestinal system than the 23,000 we have genes found in our human DNA. So all of what makes up who we are and our genetics is still just a fraction of what we do in our microbiome and in our gut. So as we noted in the other slide, 10 times more cells of bacteria in our gut, right, than we have in all the cells put in our body put together. Our intestines are a really long tube. So they're 25 feet long. They have a lot of different, the villi are like microscopic little hairs. They are what pick up and aid in the digestion and moving things around. But when you think about it, think about the surface of that would be this entire size of a tennis court. So it's a lot of area packed into this very tiny area of us, right? We receive most of our microbiome from the process before birth. So mom in utero to us then through the birthing process, then we coming through the birthing canal, we receive a lot of our microbiome, a lot of our bacteria, and it's all the good bacteria that we need to have a healthy gut. Breastfeeding continues and contributes to that, and so does skin-to-skin contact. So even thinking about if there's moms watching this or anybody that you know of a mom and you know of anybody, there's so much false, untruths, and non-fact out there in saying that breastfeeding isn't super important or that they're getting less nutrition because we're breastfeeding versus formula feeding. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so I'm telling you, there's not science showing what you're getting from a formula is better than what you're getting from breast milk. So there's a ton of components that they cannot duplicate that your body needs genetically and needs from mom that they can't make in a lab that goes in a formula. So we'll leave that at that. That's a whole nother Oprah, as we say, a whole nother conversation. But there's so much components that the baby needs. And as long as you can do that for a long period of time, great. If you can breastfeed 9 to 12 months minimum, awesome. But anything that they're getting is going to be a bazillion times better than nothing or than formulas. So that's another component where this design is very intentional, that it's happening from birth and before birth. As we get older, then it's more influenced by these things, like all the things we touch, things that we are, transferring back and forth through our mouths, the things that we consume, obviously environmental and lifestyle, things we breathe in, things in our environment. So talking about nutrient absorption and gut health, that's what's linked. It's when they always say it's not really what we eat, like we are what we eat. Well, we are what we absorb. And so there's a whole different shift in how we think about things and how our body is absorbing and processing what we put in it. So 70 to 80% of our immune system resides in our gut. And they're going closer to 80 because they're talking about oral and nasal too, areas of our system, not just the microbiome internal into the GI tract as alone. So when we talk about that in chiropractic, and we talk about it so much in your care, why people get have such boosted immune systems is the adjustment is aiding in that, but it's aiding in the signal from the brain down to that GI tract, down to all those components, and the body and the immune system is at a better defense through that process, raising white blood cells and our killer T cells and all the things that make our immune system stronger. But what taxes it is a weak gut, an unhealthy gut, and an imbalanced gut. So they go very hand in hand with how they work and how sick someone can get. So think about an imbalanced gut, you're losing that beneficial bacteria. And that's our support or our defense. If it's outnumbered by constantly being compromised and fighting or having increased infections because it's weak, or that microbiome and say for pathogens like harmful bacteria or a yeast or parasites into the body becomes more than less, then that immune system is constantly overworking just to try to keep the body in check and keep it healthy. So that immune system then weakens over time, and there's just more susceptibility to an infection or to something being compromised there. So those imbalances in that good bacteria definitely needs to be in check so that our immune system is not working too hard, because over time it just loses the battle and it gets more compromised. So it impacts how we respond to everything. If the immune system is overworking or protecting against internal infections, or hasn't, it can have an overactive or reactive response to our own tissues, the foods we put in it. Obviously, environmental triggers, things like pesticides and, dander or molds, things like that, right? So those are creating a symptom. Those are creating a response, an allergic response like asthma or frequent colds, or the skin is our biggest organ. So when we start to get more toxic inside, right, or have a bad bacteria balance versus the good bacteria, then how the body rids of toxins, if our liver and our organ systems can't keep up, is through the skin. So we'll see acne, we'll see eczema, we'll see those kinds of skin reactions to the body trying to rid of the things that it can't on the inside through our own other processes, or the levels of inflammation that creates. So that can be how it shows up in symptoms or conditions. when the immune system has weakened and worked too hard, and that gut is starting to take the beating. Primary offending invaders. Oh, right. So setting off our autoimmune response, right? So we have that imbalance of bacteria, and then it increases our risk for multitude of things like we just listed above. It may seem the more common things like a cold, allergy, asthma, to things that then long-term creates higher risk for heart disease, higher risk for cancer, strokes, diabetes, Alzheimer's, all inflammatory and autoimmune responses. When the body is overtaxed, overworked, and the immune system is either, in a sense, overstimulated. So we can see it from the opposite effect of that too. We can see it lead to things that are depression, anxiety, brain fog, and mood changes. All that's because things in the nervous system and in the endocrine system is all of our chemistry. It's affecting all of those things. So it could be, one extreme or the other. And a symptom and how it represents in your nervous system and your body, depending on what is underworking and what's overworking. So talking about how that relates with, nutrient absorption or that primary role, it's got to absorb nutrients, but it's also got to eliminate wastes and toxins. So malabsorption, right, it disrupts the growth. If we cannot absorb what we need to, the good things in our foods, the things we need to break down, the things we're taking in to give us energy and fuel, then we tend to see more of things physically. It could be just, again, low energy, fatigue, and then it can become a developmental thing. So we can see that, especially in kids, we see that younger, but even as someone gets older, then you may see that developmental piece come in where someone is more chronically sick, or we're dealing with an autoimmune condition where something is just constantly over firing and working. So the inability to eliminate, again, just builds up or recirculates. So what happens, especially with younger kiddos, is that, with adults too, is that the toxins build, and if the body can't rid of them, it just recirculates, and then it starts coming back and reabsorbing through the bloodstream. So we can start seeing a toxic blood and see that those types of bacteria and unwanted toxins in our bloodstream in blood work down the road. But it happens with kids faster, just with their younger age, and their systems are still developing as they're little, months old to years old. So I think the disruptors won't be any surprise to any of you, right? And we've covered this in lots of other workshops across the board, that those antibiotics, pesticides, things in processed foods, this isn't change one thing. They actually talk about in a lot of this research that it's not like do one thing different. There's multitude of things that have to play in here in this trifecta, which is that food has to change. What you're doing to support the biome has to change. Other support to the brain and the immune system and the gut has to change. Otherwise, we're just, in a sense, taking a step forward and a few steps backwards. So when in order to have a healthy gut, we've really got to eliminate and then limit the types of things in different areas of our, I guess, different parts of our lives, if you will, to support the health of things moving forward in that biome and in that gut. So again, antibiotics can destroys good and bad bacteria. So it's there to get rid of a bad bacteria, but it also kills off the good. It doesn't know the difference. It's kind of like chemotherapy, right? It's killing the cancer cell, and it's also killing all the good cells around it. So we have to really watch what we're doing when we're entering things like that, because they're big disruptors and they have long-term effects. It's not just, oh, I'm taking this for 7 days, 10 days. And some days or 10 days after that, my microbiome and my gut good bacteria is going to be back in check. That is false, and it usually takes months to rebuild what we've killed off. So that's why we recommend different things that we'll get into here that have to be part of the regimen if and when one of these things come into your system at any kind of regularity, or even bombarding it with little bits of things here and there. Obviously, things like pesticides that we put on our foods and then just anything processed creates a lot of this buildup and toxicity in the system. And again, destroys that good gut bacteria and biome. So talking through behavior and brain health, as I mentioned a few slides ago, that gut is developing before brain in utero. So the brain is rooted in gut health. And the majority of our neurotransmitters are produced by good bacteria in the gut. So some of these names might be familiar. The neurotransmitters that are key with that serotonin, dopamine, GABA are examples. Those are all like our feel-good hormones, and our calming hormone and neurotransmitters. So that chemistry in our body with those types of things that our endocrine system is doing, have to be there with have to have good bacteria in order to have the right amount and the right balance of our neurotransmitters. So within the gut resides, and this is again going back to 100 trillion living bacteria. So more than 10 times the number of cells you have in your entire body. And so again, maintaining this ideal or good ratio of good bacteria, and that's what we think of when we think about taking probiotics, to the bad bacteria is now they're saying perhaps one of the single most important things you can do to protect your health. And that is saying that with some caution of what we use, how we use it, who's using it, how much we're using, and what are the conditions around all the other factors that play into this so that we make sure we're dialing into probiotics in the right way for the right age group and the right person. So this isn't something we just willy-nilly throw out and say, just go take whatever it says on the label. I actually don't use anything store-bought. I use a specific brand I'll show you because I know what it's made of, because I know what's in it, because I know what it's balancing and working with the trifecta I was mentioning, the three main components that have to be there for the gut to absorb and get the most out of a probiotic and to be the most beneficial to brain and body. So because it's often rooted in an imbalanced gut biome, the brain, then we see those types of conditions happen. When they outnumber the beneficial, these are the types of things we see in a younger generation, but we also see it in adults too. We just might call it something different when it's an adult that has an attention span maybe issue versus what we would label a kid with. Or we may see it in the way in which a behavior happens that's different as an adult versus a younger kid. But it's all brain-based behavioral issues. And I wrote C list because I wanted to remind myself that I didn't plug this slide into there, but I'm going to list off some things that are very common things to see and to have people mark on their health history when they come into this office and probably to many of their doctor's offices or health care offices. And when I was looking at this list, it was coming through reading articles through some internal medicine and functional registered dietitians who tend to deal with a lot of gut health with people around food. But it said with symptoms or conditions, especially in a kiddo, but even in an adult, if there's 3 or more of these symptoms that we're regularly seeing them express or they're experiencing, then definitely consider supporting their gut health. So anything from reflux, colic, tummy aches, constipation, difficult passing stools, or diarrhea when you're with solids for a kiddo, bloating and distension, bad breath, aversion to meat, fingernails that break easily or are very, brittle, undigested food and stool, motion sickness, different colored, very light or gray colored stools, nausea, sugar cravings, a lot of head or sinus congestion, eczema, hives, sleep disturbances, a white-coated tongue, dark circles under the eyes, very frequently sick, chronic coughing or asthma, a lot of tooth decay or having a lot of cavities can be an indicator. The attention component we already talked about, or the anxiety component, or somebody that's very much maybe you would put into the category of a worrier. A lot of those components all are symptoms people represent or present with that show that there is a brain gut disconnect. So just to throw things out there, because we may have parents on the line thinking about their kiddos, or someone that is, of any other age range as an adult, thinking about maybe where they were in the past, that some of these things have been there a long time that they may have experienced. So this is where there's the gut brain skin axis as a concept that some of the researchers are using. It's really that they call our gut our second brain. And it's this theory connected and understood that it is a two-way street. So when we talk about there's so much more components and at the cellular level happening in bacteria in our gut than we do in our whole rest of our body, that they're really saying that those two things have to connect and they have to be both humming, because the connection is a two-way street, if you will. So emotional states can alter that normal intestinal flora, which then increase that permeability, right? So a leaky gut that people are told they have, that is a component of that. And it can, that obviously anything that leaks outside the gut where it's not supposed to go can create systemic inflammation. And if it's on a low level, they experience things like IBS, GERD, different things, sometimes as much as just acid reflux, leaky gut, like a Crohn's disease, things like that. But vice versa, that microflora can influence emotional states because they're vitally important to good bacteria production, right? And those neurotransmitters. So, or the chemical messengers that play a role in our mood or that cognitive function. So it is a definite two-way street. This isn't just a brain to down to gut, but the takeaway that those things have to happen and supporting is key. So the things I left in there is the stuff that Doc covered more in the other workshop, which was what's a probiotic rich diet? What kind of things are fermented foods and what should we eat and how should we rotate them? Supplements like a probiotic, and they're now seeing research with probiotics intermixed with essential oils and how those work really synergistically together. So I'm going to do a couple slides focusing on that because Doc has spent great time over the last probably this quarter of the year doing some workshops that tackle those other components of more of our foods, what to eat, how much to eat, what to rotate, and why they're important. So in this workshop, I'm going to just focus on the support and tools that we can add if you're not already, is things we can do that are from the natural perspective outside of our food. It doesn't replace food by any means, and all of the things that Doc has taught us with, kimchi and the fermented things and what to rotate through, the oils, the oils to get out of our cabinets and our diets and our cooking. Those kinds of things all have to happen. And we may need the synergistic blend of getting our bodies and our systems balanced, and probiotics and essential oils can serve a purpose there too, and can really help, again, give us more of a boost to the foods in which we're eating. The reason we say that is because there's also studies showing that people who eat very clean and eat even organic and very whole diets, we are still depleted in our soil. We're still depleted in a lot of the things that because we mass produce. So even things that are organic, they're still finding certain bacteria missing and certain things that there's still some chemistry and some pesticides that we're getting. We're just getting it at a much lower dosage, but there's still some things that it does disrupt into our gut because just the age in which we live. So we can't avoid everything we environmentally breathe in. We don't live in a bubble, so we can do our best to support and give sometimes things in addition to our good food and diets that support our gut and brain balance. So this is the supplement I use that is a prebiotic, a probiotic, and a digestive enzyme. So it has all of that built into one. It is really important that you have a combination, that the digestive enzymes, you could go buy those over the counter separately, but you need a synergistic blend of all of them, and there's 31 of them. So some are for digesting fats, some are for digesting proteins, some are for digesting carbohydrates, some, for dairy and lactose and things like that. And sugars, and how that breaks down from carbs. So you need a blend of definitely different, and especially if you eat more if you favor a way in which of what you eat. So whether it's someone who's, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, there's components that there's different things we eat and don't eat in our diet that sometimes need some support from other places. So why I like this is for multiple reasons, but I put in some of the key ones that I don't see in things over the counter that you can buy. There's only a few that I've noticed that have these types of components in them. So you're really getting the most out of what you're taking. So we could spend 20 minutes talking about probiotics, prebiotics, and enzymes and how they need to be dialed into and how you need to receive them in the body. But what's really important is a couple key things: that you've got a prebiotic that's helping support the first part of the gut, so the first part of the stomach, and the nourishment that needs there. There has to be a mix. Enzymes are what helps you break down the foods you are eating so that you can then absorb what you're eating. And again, if we go back to that first slide, it's all about absorption. If our body doesn't absorb it, it's like taking a vitamin that our body can't break down. If it's made in a lab and it's synthetic and over the counter, the body has to work a ton harder to break that down. And if it doesn't break it down and it can't break it down, then you're not absorbing what's in the vitamin. And you just have really expensive pee, right? For lack of a better way of saying that. So it's all about the breakdown, and so that we have absorption. And if our gut is healthy and doing what it has all it needs to do, and our enzymes and our bacteria are at the right place in our gut, all the way from start into that, where we, when we first swallow something, getting into that very top of the actual pouch of the stomach, and then getting through the stomach, through the small intestine, the large intestine, the ascending, the transverse, the descending colon, and out our body. There's tons happening there in that tennis size court of our intestines, if you strung them all out, right? There's a lot happening. So endospores are really important. They're resilient probiotics, and they outlast that stomach's acidity. So I have not seen many things on the market that basically have an enteric coating, or this way in which things can get through the stomach acid. So it's got to get past the stomach pouch and acid in order to get all those good bacteria into the actual gut itself, down into the intestines. And so you need something that has that process to, again, take less and the body receive more, instead of just taking more and more and more because you're like, well, hopefully some gets through. So it's really important that I feel like an enzyme or a probiotic of any type has that type of process or an enteric coating, so that, again, what we need to get to where it goes gets where it's supposed to be. When there's inflammation or bloating in the body, that's really usually because our enzymes are off, one component or another of all of those 31, 32 plus. So probiotics also serve when there's ingredients in there in the right combination to improve the digestion. But again, it's really because you're improving absorption and the breakdown process of things that you're putting in your body. The next slide or two is all on some key essential oils. And again, we've done some workshops on essential oils earlier this year. We probably have one coming up in the fall that's maybe in more detail. So I think we did a, essential oil 101, teaching you about them, how they're made, what's important, which ones to avoid, the high quality of them and what they do and what the purpose is. These are some key pure essential oils. And again, getting proper quality that's not filled with perfumes and additives and dyes and all the other things that I see when you go buy it over the counter at a grocery store, but getting something of a high quality and that is, outside lab tested. We use a couple brands. doTERRA is one I recommend highly. Young Living has some phenomenal ones. And there's another brand or two that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. I should have put on my list. But looking at this list, for digestive, components and things that calm the system, peppermint and lavender are big go-tos. They help with anti-inflammatory processes. They're linked with supporting mood and lowering anxiety. So those are all components that you could use for multiple reasons, but it's gut related. Ginger, very, very much, I think, one of the top of the list for most every nutrition or dietitian I read information from. And again, taking them in an enteric coated capsule gets it where it's supposed to go and past the stomach acid. Thyme's another one there, as you see, and cumin. So a lot of those things are all based on because all these type of gut conditions or diseases are inflammatory. So for someone who's had inflammation and a lot of bloating, it's because things are leaking out of places they're not supposed to be a lot of times. And so we're looking at things that are all about decreasing inflammation with those conditions. So it can really help, as it says, improving that intestinal tract directly, helping cleaning, our cleaning products and the things we do. It's not just about cleaning the inside of us, but literally what are we cleaning our surfaces and doing things with that promotes us breathing in more chemicals. So there are the lines we use here with essential oils have products that you can clean with that are safe for you, your animals, and pets, your kiddos, anybody that's, walking and eating off of the floor. And there's things like that you want to watch what you're using in your house and your chemistry. And we've covered that in other workshops about essential oils too, but really stress relief. And these are a list of another handful of oils that might be worth jotting down. And then us diving deeper with you if there's a reason and how in which you would use things like thyme, cardamom, clove, oregano, fennel. All those fall into the realm with the gut health? We just don't have enough time today to dive into those individually, but we can certainly get you research on that and get you ways in which to use them and ways in which to support your gut balance and maybe things that are causing gut interference for you. So again, when we talk about supporting it and that help supporting that second brain, it's really similar to how Doc said with the microbiome and what we were talking about with addressing the stressors, right? What's creating the stressors and how you adapt to it is so important. So our goal with these workshops is that we're shifting our focus away from, right, and wanting to eliminate those dangerous bacteria and towards strengthening the good bacteria. So you have to have bacteria. You have to have a lot of good bacteria. So I think we were taught back in the day, all bacteria is bad. And that is 100% false when it comes to your gut, and that there's ways to do this through more holistic options. So, that's referring to how can we, again, as a whole, strengthen the body towards wellness, towards a place of health versus a place of sickness and truly death, right? So ways in which we do that is through chiropractic. Beyond how do we support the internal systems, right? Doc just did a workshop on vital needs last. And that is, if you guys have seen the triangle in the office or saw the workshop, it's talking about what's the most important thing. And through chiropractic, we're looking at, if you think about the triangle, like people used to use like the food pyramid triangle, right? It's of what's most priority at the top. So in a nutshell, that vital need is all about how we're supporting you through your nervous system, because you can go 3 weeks for many people who study at a very intense level with their body and are very tuned in, that we've seen monks and studies of people where they can go 3 weeks without food. People can go a few days without water. People can go a few minutes without air and oxygen. 2 to 3, right before we start having brain cells die off and brain function stop. You can go seconds, if not a second. Instantaneous is what your body cannot function without its nervous system and without the brain connecting to your body through your nervous system and your spinal cord. So through chiropractic, you are elevating your health, elevating that ability for that two-way connection, right? It's an efferent and afferent loop. The signal has to come down and to all the body and all that good gut and all of that good processing system. And then it has to go back up to the brain, as you saw, 4 to 5 times more frequent, to just get that signal back up to the brain with all the things that the gut is doing and the rest of the body is doing. So through engaging in your chiropractic care, and like you are here with workshops, we're spreading that word to more and more people by sharing these kinds of concepts and understanding that the most important thing is supporting your nervous system and your brain and your body. And as you do that, you have that clearer path for the signal to get through back and forth in that two-way street, that two-way system. And then supporting your gut and supporting those organ systems is, again, all part of the process. How we can help you in picking and making better choices is why we're here and why we do these workshops. So share this with those you know. If there's those that you have that talk about their gut health or talk about the components in which their immune system is challenged from that. share this workshop with them. If you want to reach out to the girls, you can message them, you could email them, or let them know when you're in the office. We can send this link in our recording to anyone that you'd like to watch this. And all people are welcome to be on our workshops. You don't have to be a patient. So spread this with somebody that you know and that you love and that you care about. And thank you, all of you who are online that and listening today that shared Patient Appreciation Week with your loved ones. It's been awesome to meet your family and your friends and your coworkers and your parents and grandparents and people in your world that you love. So we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for workshop again on. Oh, are we doing sleep? Okay. Next week we're doing sleep. We might have reversed the order in a week or two because of vacations. So we're working on sleep, and Doc does an amazing job talking about our circadian rhythms and the best way to get the best amount of sleep and quality sleep. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.